Welcome to Around the Empire. I'm your host, Joanne Leon. Around the Empire podcast is listener-supported independent media. Please pitch in at patreon.com/aroundtheempire or at paypal.me/aroundtheempirepod. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/aroundtheempire. Nasser Arrabyee joins us today, speaking to us from Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Nasser describes the recent drone attacks by the Yemen armed forces, led by the Houthis, on the Saudi oil facilities in Abqaiq and Khurais. We discussed the fact that there have been numerous other progressively advanced retaliatory strikes by Yemen on Saudi Arabia in recent months and over the past few years. Further, we talk about the 5-year bombardment and blockade of Yemen by Saudi Arabia, with the critical assistance of the United States, and how the number of casualties has been grossly understated. Nasser Arrabyee is a journalist and filmmaker based in Sana'a, Yemen. We recorded this on September 17th, 2019. Our guest today is Nasser Arrabyee, speaking to us from Sana'a in Yemen. Hello, Nasser. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you very much.
So, there's a lot going on right now. There's some panic about the attacks on the Saudi oil processing facility, and a lot of questions for some reason, even though the Yemeni armed forces made a formal speech claiming credibility for that attack. There are a lot of questions about who really did this attack, and of course it's being blamed on Iran. The Houthis are being cast as a proxy for Iran. You and I spoke, we talked about a year ago, and you made it clear that the Houthis are no one's proxy. They may receive some help and support from Iran, but they're acting on their own behalf. Can you tell us what you've heard about the attacks on the Saudi oil facility and whatever else you think the audience would it be good for them to hear?
Yeah, thank you very much. The attack on the Saudi oil was Yemeni 100%. The drones were Yemeni 100%. And it was not the first attack. It was the third of its kind, the third major attack of this kind. The first one was in May on a pipeline connecting the west-east of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The second one was on August against an oil field at the far east of the kingdom, Shaiba field, and this one is the third one. And the Yemenis, under the leadership of Houthi, claimed responsibility, and they said clearly that this attack or these attacks come in retaliation for the 5 years of Saudi aggression, killing and destroying Yemen for 5 years. Yemeni blood is not that cheap, so Yemenis do not care about the wrangles between US and Iran and Saudi and Iran. No, Yemenis even don't care about whether the world believe or not believe, but Yemenis want to tell the world that Saudi Arabia have killed more than 100,000 Yemeni civilians so far, at homes, schools, hospitals, weddings, funerals, farms, and everywhere. So they destroyed the infrastructure of Yemen and they killed the civilians. The last massacre was earlier this month, where Saudi Arabia bombed a prison here in Damar, 200 kilometers from where I'm speaking to you now. They killed 300 prisoners, 300 war prisoners who were fighting with Saudi Arabia. So the massacres are countless for Saudi Arabia, and the Yemenis are just retaliating, and they will, of course, the armed forces, the Houthi armed forces, confirmed that these such attacks will be wider and harder and more painful. So they will continue, Yemenis will continue defending themselves. So the attack on the Saudi oil facilities of Abqaiq and Khurais were Yemeni attacks 100% in retaliation for the Saudi aggression over the last 5 years.
Right. I know that you've said that online, and I just wanted you to repeat that here for our audience. And I mean, maybe some people aren't aware that Yemen has a missile program and has had it for a long time. And over the last at least maybe 2 years, they've been modifying and improving various missiles and firing them into Saudi Arabia. And it is reported in the news here, but maybe it doesn't get that much attention. But the drone attacks are fairly new. When did they start? When did the drone attacks and the technical work on drones, when did that start? And can you tell us anything about that program?
Yes, this is published and known to everyone. The drones program started, I think, in 2017, and they started with small things like just for surveillance and spying and these things, and then they developed them and to have the armed ones, the bomb-laden drones, and I think bomb-laden drones started 2018, and late 2018 they declared the most advanced one. I mean, the first one was Kasif 1. This is bomb-laden drone, but with short range, and the one with the long range was called Samad 3. And Samad is the name of the president who was assassinated by U.S. Saudi airstrikes in Hodeidah, west of the country, in 2018, early 2018. So this drone, the Samad 3, was also tested to the airport of Abu Dhabi in UAE, and this was proved with hard evidence, with pictures and images that were also shown to the world. It was not new, and then they carried out. I mean, these drones, the advanced drones, carried out the large scale operation on May against the pipeline connecting the west and east of the kingdom, and this was with 10 drones, and then 10 drones also were deployed to attack the Shaiba field in the far east of kingdom, in the border with UAE. This is in August, and this month, only this week, this weekend, they also deployed 10 drones, 10 powerful drones of this kind, Samad 3, to attack the 2 Saudi oil refineries or processing plants in the far east of Saudi Arabia. And this one was stunning, because it was highly accurate, and also the very, very, very powerful. The damage that was done was unbelievable. So the Americans and the Saudis do not want to say the Houthi is this strong, so they keep now distracting the attention to something else, to Iran, although, of course, if they were very confident, they would have proved, they would have also detected everything, and they would have told the world the truth if they had the truth. But they know very well that where the drones came from and why they came from. Yemenis do not want to help Iran because Yemenis are under bombing and are under starvation for 5 years now. So they don't have time, they don't have energy, they don't have anything for Iran. But what they should do is to help themselves first. They should rescue themselves from being killed and destroyed and starved by Saudis. So they don't have time to waste for Iran or to help Iran, and Iran does not need help from Yemenis, because they are under bombing and under starvation, as I told you. So the only way out from this mess or from this problem for Saudi is to stop. And also the only out for the people who want now, who look to the oil as something more important than blood and then human beings being killed every day, the only way out for them is to stop the Saudi aggression, not to talk about anything else.
Right. It does seem simple. And yet it's been about 5 years now that the Saudis have been bombing and attacking Yemen, and they refuse to stop. And now it seems like they refuse to even acknowledge this, even though these attacks from the retaliatory attacks from Yemen have been happening for a long time now.
And this is this is not the first time. This is not the first time when Saudi Arabia is denying. Saudi Arabia always deny what's happening from Yemen. Always, they acknowledge only the missile number 100, the ballistic missile 100. They said, okay, it came from Houthi and it is terrorist thing, and they ignore their terrorism over Yemenis, and they now talk about the terrorism. But for Yemenis, being killed is not terrorism, as Saudi understand, or as Saudis put it.
Now, no one seems to know exactly where these drones came from, and I'm not sure what you can say, what you can't. But I think what you are alleging is that the drones were launched from within Yemen somewhere. They weren't launched from anywhere else, right?
Yes, they know. Saudis know everything. As recently as last week, they came here bombing the prison I told you, where they killed 300, at least 300 war prisoners, and they said publicly to the world that they bombed and they destroyed the stores of the drones. So why today they say the drones came from Iran or from Iraq or from anywhere else? They come every day here to bomb the schools, the installations and the infrastructure, looking for the drones and ballistic missiles. So they know. And the Yemenis also, under the leadership of Houthi, they declared the drones I told you, and they also they declared it, and they made something like an exhibition of these drones and the ballistic missiles, and they invited the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the Parliament and the Minister of Defense, and they filmed everything, and they published this film when they kicked off that exhibition of the drone. And they also published the details of every drone and every ballistic missiles and the range and the power and everything about. I mean, all details of the drones and the ballistic missiles were published, and Saudis know, and the Saudis now keep looking and keep also using some spies, and they want to know where they are. They want to destroy them, but they don't know where they are. They are in Yemen, and Yemen is very big, and the Yemenis can hide these things for hundreds of years. North Korea do the same. They know where to hide and how to hide, and when you want to defend yourself, you have a lot of options and a lot of things to hide the things that defend yourself. So Saudis are yes.
Now, the difference this time, or at least as far as I know, is when the spokesman for the Houthis and the Yemeni armed forces announced this attack of 10 drones on the Saudi oil processing facilities. This time they said that they had assistance from some people from within Saudi Arabia. I think they called them some honorable actors inside Saudi Arabia. So they didn't mean that they launched I assume they didn't mean that they launched the drones. Maybe it was very specific targeting. So did they specify exactly how these people helped?
Yes, I will clarify this point for you and for your audience simply. First, the first and foremost, the eastern area of Saudi Arabia is area of Shiite Muslim, and they are persecuted. They are repressed by the Saudi regime, and a lot of people are in prison now, and they are being harassed and being put in jails and on trials, unfair trials, and some of them, of course, were already executed. And so when Houthi spokesman said that there were some honorable people who cooperated with them, it is logic. It is possible to find people who can help Houthi, and I think this is why the attacks were such accurate because of this cooperation. Because they know. I mean, the attacks were on the most sensitive places that caused that huge fires and that caused that huge damage on the oil facilities. So collaborators and those who could collaborate are very many everywhere, because the Crown Prince made a lot of enemies, not only in the Saudi Arabia, but also in the family. In the family, he brought all his cousins and his half brothers and the princes and businessmen and judges and the clergymen and everybody. He put them in prison to consolidate the power in his hands.
Right.
So he has a lot of enemies everywhere.
Right, of course. The drones that they sent, the 10 drones that they sent this time, you're saying that the previous attack in May was also 10 drones. But this one on the oil processing facility, the pictures that we've seen, they were very precise strikes. I don't know if you saw Moon of Alabama's analysis, but he counted what he thought were 17 strikes on, and they were very specific on some round gas holding tanks facilities, and they were, really precise. Do you think that these were, like, they fed coordinates to these drones, or do you think that the drones were actually being operated by a human operator who was then, flying over the tanks and then shooting the specific tanks via human control or pre-programmed with coordinates. I mean, just
Yes, yes, I know. This is very complicated, to be honest with you. But what is sure, what is sure for us? I mean, what we do know is that the drones, these powerful drones, are here, and are here in Yemen, not in somewhere else. And the Emiratis know, Americans know very well. They damaged a tanker or a truck inside the airport of Abu Dhabi, and the Americans know very well, and the American intelligence and everyone, and the UAE officials, and they know it. So the test was to the Abu Dhabi airport. So they are powerful, and UN also knows that the range of these drones is 1,500 kilometers.
wow.
So, and the distance, yes, UN, you can read the UN report. The UN report knows that Houthis have drones that have the range which is about 1,500 kilometers. This is something that is known by everyone, and I'm sure Americans know very well. But for the hits, I don't know how. I mean, they said just 10 drones, but how many missiles, how many bombs with every drone, we don't know. But what is sure, what is certain is these drones came from Yemen. UN knows that Houthis have these drones, and American knows, Saudi knows very well, because they the three major attacks I told you about in May, August, and September. There were other tests by these drones to Saudi heartland, and the Saudis know, but they were not announced. They were not. The Houthis here preferred not to speak about, but the Saudi authorities know very well, and they were hitting Yemen almost every day, the beginning of this year and late last year, and say every time we destroyed the storage of the drones. We destroyed the storage of the drones and ballistic missiles. Every time, you can just refer to their media what they say. They destroy every week, every month. They destroy these stores. So they know very well, and they are hitting civilians, killing women and children and everyone in Yemen, and because they say we are just destroying the drones and the ballistic missiles.
Now let's get back to the people of Yemen and what's going on there. I heard your interview. You had a recent interview with Scott Horton, and he was asking you basically how many people have died in this war. And this is basically a hidden figure because they seem to have stopped counting. They said 10,000, and they kept saying 10,000 and 10,000. And any of us who are paying attention to this war know that has to be a ridiculous number. And you told Scott Horton that you believe that the casualties are now somewhere in the range of 120,000 people. Now, is that civilians? Does that count? I mean, it's horrible, and it's horrible that it's being hidden. What's your best guess on, can you explain to us how many people have actually died?
First of all, it's funny to say the people who were killed are 10,000, because United Nations said this number, or both this number in September 2015. This is the first year of this aggression. In September 2015, they said 10,000. After that, they stopped. And 2 months later, I challenged the UN envoy in Yemen, and this is, of course, in video, and it is published. You can find it. I challenged him, and I told him, please, why you keep saying, I told him why. I challenged him in November or December 2015. Why you keep saying 10,000? And he said, simply because more than 50% of the health facilities are destroyed, and we can't put numbers from our heads. This is what he told me. This is Jamie McGoldrick. And after that, they stopped. Of course, they just stopped counting because Saudi Arabia exercised a lot of pressure on the United Nations not to update the number, although they could have updated the number without even the health facilities. But Saudi Arabia didn't want them to do that. So there were a lot of people, a lot of activists, journalists, and also human rights groups, local and international, who were also who made their own statistics, and I'm one of them as a Yemeni journalist, and as a Yemeni also who cares very much about his country under bombing for 5 years now. So I also had my own way to count with my simple tools and my simple resources. But I counted, and many others also, I counted more than 100,000 Yemenis who were civilians who were killed by Saudi airstrikes in homes, schools, hospitals, weddings, funerals, farms, and civilian places. And I'm not accounting here the people who died because of the aggression related, because of the war related reasons like starvation or like malnutrition or like diseases like cholera or something like this. This is something else. I was just focusing on the people who were killed while in schools or hospitals or sleeping at homes or something like this, weddings or funerals, as I told you, who were very, very civilian places. So we just wanted to tell the people what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen. The last massacre was only this on September the 1st this year, about 2 weeks ago. They came and bombed a prison full of war prisoners. Saudi Arabia knows that it was a prison. ICRC, that is the International Cross Committee, also knows that it was a prison, and everybody knows that it was a prison. Saudi Arabia came and bombed it with 10 airstrikes,
right,
and destroying it to ground, killing all these people, killing everyone. This is what Saudi Arabia is doing: atrocities, war crimes, and genocides in Yemen.
Right. So that number is actually much larger because of the people dying of starvation and disease, and it doesn't count the number of people the combatants, people who are actually fighting. And in the
UN now has a report and statistics, and they are talking about 250,000 Yemenis will be dead at the end of 2019, but including everyone, including including people who died by diseases, by malnutrition, by everything. So they also have, but not the UN in Sana'a, but the UN outside, the investigators of UN.
Well, I need to let you go in a few minutes, but I want to ask you to, first of all, I'm going to include a link in the show notes to Nasser's interview with Scott Horton, where he explains more about the fight between the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis and the bombing of that prison that he's talking about. He gives a lot more details about that to Scott, and you can all listen to that. But Nasser, before we go, anything else that you want to say to our audience to get this information out there?
Yes, this war will never end except if Trump is willing to end it. Nothing will end it. Nothing will end the suffering, the atrocities in Yemen, except if the United States want to end it. So Saudis will keep clinging to the kind of cuddling, if I may. Trump is cuddling Mohammed bin Salman, and this will make a problem to Yemenis and to the region and to the world by emboldening and by encouraging Mohammed bin Salman to do this. So I think this the end of the end of these problems will be only when the Saudi aggression ends, and Saudi aggression will never end if Trump doesn't want to end it. Trump can end it in minutes if he wants. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows why. Trump has United States has every leverage and every clout and every influence, every power to stop Saudi Arabia, or at least to convince them just to get down from the top of the high tree and find a way out. Otherwise, Yemenis will keep defending themselves as they saw this week. They will defend themselves because Yemenis will not sit idly by and watch Saudis killing and destroying Yemen, and they do not do anything. This can't be done. This is impossible.
Right. Just hopefully everyone already knows this, but basically the Saudis cannot continue this war without American and also British, but mainly American assistance. So if our Congress is already working on ending this war, but if Trump continues to veto, if he decides to keep this war going, that's the only way that they can continue. I want to add something. I want to add something, if I may. I want Trump and everyone who's doubting about what I'm saying. I want everyone to listen to what the Congress people of the United States, what they say, like Chris Murphy and a lot, what they say. They should listen to them, what they say about Yemen. Houthi is not Iran. Houthi is not Iran. This is what Chris Murphy said, and repeatedly from the very beginning of this war. So there are good people who know what's happening and what Saudi Arabia is doing. Everybody knows that Saudi Arabia is trying to cover up. Saudi Arabia is trying to mislead and misinform the world, and it is doing the same way as after they killed and dismembered Jamal Khashoggi in the Turkish consulate last year. So they are doing the same thing now. They are talking about Iran. They are covering up. Unfortunately, the audio recording was cut off during that last minute of our interview. And I'm not sure why. I had some difficulty recording this call from the start. I had to use my backup method for recording, so luckily we only lost that last minute. It was cut off while we were wrapping up. And really, I feel like it's a minor miracle that we were able to communicate with Nasser at all. So I'm grateful that he can and is willing to do these interviews from his war-torn country. So thank you for listening. A special thanks to Nasser Arrabyee. Follow Nasser on Twitter at NARRABYEE, Narrabee. The Around the Empire podcast is independent media. Pitch in if you can at patreon.com/aroundtheempire or do one-time donations via PayPal at paypal.me/aroundtheempirepod. There are many ways to listen to this show. You can find everything at the website, aroundtheempire.com. You can find it on any mobile podcast app, or on Patreon, patreon.com/aroundtheempire, or on YouTube, youtube.com/aroundtheempire. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, leave me a comment or send me some feedback or suggestions at admin@aroundtheempire.com. I try to respond to all these messages, but also keep in mind I'm a one-woman show, so at times there may be a delay. And also, let me take this opportunity to thank my patrons and contributors who help defray the cost of production and provide much needed and appreciated support. Last thing, follow the show on Twitter at Around the Empire. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.